I'm doing a TED Talk in a couple of weeks, and I went to the speaker coaching thing today.
Mhm. Oh,
Destroyed me. They hated it. I had to
really?
retool the whole talk.
You're serious?
Yeah. Didn't. They said there's not a talk here. There's not enough here. So
Wow.
I got to go and figure out. Yeah, have you ever had anyone make you rehearse?
Yeah.
Like write it down and memorize it? I don't like that.
I hate it. I hate it.
I hate it. So I've done this talk like 3 times in front of like people that I know and they like love it. And then I did it there. I did it completely wrong. Like I screwed myself over completely
Well, what do
because
you
it
mean?
was not the talk I wanted to do. They didn't pick it up. They weren't giving me any energy. They hated it.
Huh.
And
Do you think
telling them, trust me, bro, is not a strategy for a good TED Talk, it turns out.
so?
But
How did
yeah,
you screw it up so bad?
the vibes weren't there. The narrative, I had an outline in front of me. I overthought it. Like they want it to be scripted without being scripted. I've got beats to hit, but I don't really hold the bullets in my head
Yeah.
the way that other people do. I know how I want to get there, but there's not a lot of room in a TED Talk for wandering. Like, what's the whole essence of a TED Talk? If you were going to give a TED Talk, it would be everything you know about blank is wrong.
Yeah.
Here's why you should think about it this way. Like that's the structure, and here's the call to action. So I didn't have any of those things. I had a 12-minute stand-up comedy bit about my life, and it did not land. So yeah, that was my morning.
Well, that sucks. You think
This
it'll make
is
you talk?
good. Well, here's a good thing. We can learn about feedback today. I called a couple people. I called people who gotten feedback like this before. Some were reduced to tears.
Wow.
What is a good way to build one's emotional resilience so that they can receive feedback and not just be decimated? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can see it from their perspective. So I respect the feedback and I can adjust.
But you're not going to cry.
Well, I might tear up a little bit on our YouTube. No, but it wasn't like that because my identity is not attached to the thing that they give me feedback on. Like if it was a piece of art that I'd worked for 20 years on and done like an MFA, and I was like, here's my thesis on the culmination of my life's work.
Yeah.
That would have been challenging. So like because feedback's someone's opinion, right? Have you
Yeah.
ever given someone feedback and had them cry?
Not that I know of.
At least you wouldn't know because they slinked away and cried quietly and you couldn't
Maybe.
see what you did to them.
Maybe.
Let me tell you about the time you gave me feedback.
I know. Oh, yeah. So one. You.
It's just that one. Just that one. Oh, by the way, there's a really good comment on our YouTube from last week where they said that they like it when we call each other out for multitasking. I just saw you maximize a window and your face got bright because something entered light mode. They're like,
What?
good job keeping them on topic. See how my hands are away
Yeah.
from the keyboard and you're doing email?
Wait, can you see flashing?
Yep, 100%.
I'm doing Morse code with
Yeah.
the flashing.
That's exactly what I saw.
And you've got glasses, so I can really tell.
Yeah, you can know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, like hard feedback is hard. But I think feedback's one of these words that just gets overloaded because when is feedback valid and actionable? And when is feedback just someone else's opinion?
Are we doing the show right now?
I think we are.
Is this, and by the way, this seems to be the shtick now of you starting to talk just randomly and me going, is this the show? And
that
me
is,
going,
that is how every show goes now because it's about our lives, unless you have some better show. I just feel like this just happened like an hour ago.
Yeah.
I came from this event. And
actually, I mean, this is a interesting topic because one of the things that I see is, I mean, you've been in meetings where somebody comes and asserts something like it's a UX and they're like, that's wrong. It should be like this.
Yeah.
And then the whole data-driven principle. We're going to be data-driven.
Right.
Like, where's the data that says it's wrong? Well, I don't have the data, but I know that it's wrong. I've been around the block enough times.
Trust me, bro.
That I know that it's wrong. Well, you don't have the data. It's staying the way it is.
That's a very Microsoft thing.
Yeah.
Big tech probably.
It's like the weaponization of data-driven.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go and do a survey. Do some user studies.
Yeah. Go fetch this rock.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then I guess this is where it's an art. You have to know when data will help you and when you're making a decision where you don't necessarily need the data to support it because there's enough evidence already,
Hmm.
or your instinct, or you've got a strategic vision for changing things, and so you
Yeah.
won't be able to get positive data. This is, for example, Steve Jobs saying, "Hey, we're going to make a phone without a keyboard." Go find the data that says people want that. No, I love my BlackBerry.
Yeah.
I'm never going to use a
But
phone without a
he's
keyboard.
starting from if we start with this belief,
Yeah,
regardless of what anyone thinks, well, how far can we take it?
yeah,
And it turns out it worked. Can't argue with it now, but you could argue with it at the
yeah.
moment.
But if he'd been in a data-driven culture, you couldn't get the data to support it. This
Yeah.
is like creating a new product category. It's really hard to get data to support it. You can get some signals, and of course, you should try to work on it. But this is where instinct, art, experience all come together to have a vision where you've got to just take a leap.
Right. Well, in the context of this feedback that I got today, it's the 13th year that they've done it. It's the third or fourth biggest TED in the world. That's their
You're
data.
not you're not at the biggest one.
No, it's not like you.
Yeah. Well,
But
I've not been invited to even the 10th biggest one.
it'll
So
be, I don't know,
you're
it'll be
you're ahead
three
of
or
me.
4,000
Yeah.
people, but it's like small by big tech conference feedback. But this is a great point. So I could do this talk with a page of notes tomorrow in an hour if the talk was at Microsoft Build, or if
Yeah.
it was at South by Southwest, or if it was at XOXO or some festival. But because they are the experts at TED and I am not, that's the data that they have for 13 years of successful TED.
Hmm.
So I should listen to their feedback. So when someone gives you feedback, I think you have to ask yourself, what is their motivation? They want a good event. They're not trying to make anybody
Yeah.
sad,
Yeah. They're not trying to
right?
make you. Yeah.
And I think that's a thing that I can do and you can do because we are people of a certain age with a certain amount of experience. But when you're 17 or 20 or 25, you're not thinking about the motivation of the feedback giver.
Yeah.
You think they're against you. And you feel attacked. Like, why would you say that?
Well, but actually, in the corporate world, you can have that kind of feedback.
Hmm.
You can have
Okay.
we don't want to do that, and it's motivated by we're doing our own thing and we like it, or I'd have to change, um, or I view it as this is a competitive situation. I win or you win.
Yeah. That's where the calculus of office politics gets complicated.
Yeah.
And the combinatorics in my head are really strange when I'm in a meeting and I'm like, should I say this? And then I look at the 81 people in the meeting
Yeah.
and I go, probably not in this meeting.
Yeah. We talked about that before.
Hmm.
Do you remember
We
that?
did.
Do you
We
remember?
did.
So
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, like related to this whole thing of, I mean, you and I have both seen this, I'm sure, which is the team that doesn't want to do what you'd like them to do. And it's the throw up smokescreen defense. No, we can't do it because of X. No, we can't do it because of Y. No, it doesn't make sense. No, where's the data? It's just one thing. Like you're like, okay, here's my answer to this one. Well, and it's solid answer that they can't refute.
Hmm.
Okay, well,
Hmm.
but then there's this other thing. Like, what about that? You're like, well, okay, so that, and it just is like this never ending. And it after a couple of those, and it's like becomes very clear they just don't want to do it, and they're just trying to find any excuse.
In those instances, that's like game theory, with the two prisoners trying to figure out
Yeah,
who's going to get out. And in game theory, the challenge is, do you assume best intentions or do you assume an adversarial relationship? And my career and probably my Achilles heel has always been my
what are
naivete.
you clicking on right now?
I'm I'm clicking away something because I'm trying to concentrate on you and I wanted to get it out of the way.
Okay.
But I'm also looking up and to the right because it's like this is where you recall and this is where
Yeah,
you can come up with new ideas. So I'm not
uh-huh.
actually looking at anything. There's nothing on
Yeah,
this monitor. But my Achilles heel is my naivete, and I tend to assume best intentions, which is how I got into this situation with you.
but
Not realizing how truly evil you are.
That's right. And I'm just trying to crush your reputation
Oh
by
yeah,
making you look bad.
one bad
Yeah.
podcast at a
Yeah.
time.
No, I think if you, and you, I'm sure you've seen these people that are walking around assuming bad intention,
Right.
and they feel like, wait, they're saying no because really what they're trying to do is they want to kill my project. That's why they're,
Mm.
yeah.
Twirly
And
mustache,
you've
twirly
seen this.
mustache. Yeah.
We've all come across those people in our corporate histories
Yeah.
of the paranoid. Everybody's out to destroy things. They're all acting in bad faith. They're talking about things without me around.
Yeah.
And that's just a miserable way to live in general. And that's not to say you need to swing to the other extreme and always assume that people are acting in good faith and never have ulterior motives that they're not sharing with you, because that's certainly going to happen. But at least approaching things with, I'm going to assume that you're not doing that. And I'm going to
Right.
assume it until I have really good evidence that you are, is
That's
the,
hard to do.
yeah,
That's hard to do based on where you come from, your culture, and where you came from in the world, how old you are, how confident you are in your own abilities and your own
yeah,
standing in the company. You know, if you're at a time of layoffs, that can be a thing that would make you feel more tense. If you what have you done for me lately thing with your
yeah,
boss, where it's like, yeah, I'm on good standing with my boss because in the game of corporate Flappy Bird, I'm on an upswing because I recently did
yeah,
something cool.
yeah,
Yeah. I'm like, well, Microsoft Build, you and I have been like working on Build and trying to make it better. And I'm deep in it right now. And there's always arguments about how we should do Build. And in no sense have I ever felt like anyone was against it. No, like you and I want to see a tech conference
yeah,
a certain way. But if someone disagrees, it's not because they're evil and they're trying to torpedo an event. They just have a different opinion.
which is wrong.
Yeah. Our opinions are the
Yeah.
superior opinions, of course. Do you believe in the whole? Have you heard that term? Is it like compliment? No, feedback bookends.
Oh, yeah.
Was it kiss, kick,
Actually,
kiss?
yeah. I actually think that that's probably a wise practice,
Yeah, that's
because
constructive
it makes it
feedback.
easy.
That's what we're doing.
Because if you just come in raw and like, "Hey, Scott, that sucked," it's really hard for you to accept that because you're
That's what
immediately
happened to
on the
me today.
defense. Yeah, you're immediately like, "Wow, you're an ass. I'm gonna reject everything you say. And by the way, and
Yeah,
I'm not listening now because I'm so mad." Like,
yeah, yeah. I know what that
versus
feels like.
Scott, man, there was some really awesome stuff you just did there.
It's got good bones,
Yeah,
but
here's
it
some ways to
sucks.
improve it. Like,
Yeah,
here's
yeah.
here's to make it suck less.
That would have helped. That would have
Yeah,
helped. Yeah.
yeah,
There's nothing here. It is unredeemable. It's not redeemable. is is less helpful. So yeah, so constructive feedback should be provided with like this was not entirely irredeemable.
yeah. And actually making it clear, I think that makes it clear that you're coming from a place of positive intent as well, not just.
Yep,
Um,
not
or,
just trying to tear people down.
yeah, and then
You did your PhD on something interesting. Did you have to like? Did anyone ever give you really horrible feedback and like tell
no,
you that it was trash, or you just like
it was awesome.
sailed your way into a
Failed
doctorate?
smooth. Yeah,
Super easy.
yeah.
Yeah, no one even
It was
reviewed
actually
it. You
easier
just
than I
rubber
expected.
stamp, rubber stamp.
Yeah.
Have you got any good? Like, give me some feedback story. Surely Satya or someone has called you and said, "Knock it off, dude. Stop tweeting about that."
Um. Well, I actually at the MVP summit, which I had a blast at.
Yeah.
I gave a talk on the history of Azure.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
it
yeah.
was
I
like
helped you.
a talk about the history of Azure and then where Azure's
Mhm.
going.
Yeah, I reviewed your slides and you
Yeah,
ignored all my
you did.
suggestions.
So
Yeah.
so one story was, so we had Azure started with something called Red Dog Front End,
Mhm.
which is what implemented the control plane to Azure, and it had as part of it a cloud service model that we was PaaS based,
Mhm.
and was that had two types of application deployment: a web role and worker role. And the description of the application was the composition of web and worker roles plus the networking between them and the external networking. It was very simple. It didn't talk about storage, disks, any other PaaS service. That was the cloud service model.
Mhm.
And after being in Azure for for a while, I'm like, this cloud applications are not just compute with the network between that connects them. They're consists of all these other resources. So I had become familiar with Service Fabric, which had this way of describing applications itself. Again, that didn't include these other resources, but it was a declarative model where you described exactly how these things connected together. And I took inspiration from that to propose that we create something that was an application model that you would describe declaratively and include the dependencies on other resources and have it be extensible so that the control plane could really model any resource, any service type. And that the control plane would just be basically a router and a front end. And that the imperative API would be the same as the declarative API. So you could support template-based deployments or interact with it, with one-off API calls like you could with RDFE.
You see how
And,
I'm not yawning or giving you any kind of feedback about the length of this story, and I'm wondering where the point is. But
oh,
I'm doing that because I respect you.
I appreciate that. But thanks for the message that I should
I'm
move it along.
wondering. I'm wondering how this
Where's
is
the
bad. This is constructive feedback that you've
Yeah.
received, Microsoft.
All right. So anyway, the bottom line is that what I was proposing was ARM. It wasn't called ARM then, the Azure Resource Manager.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm very excited about it because this is going to unlock, ability for the cloud to model anything, be extensible, even things outside of Azure.
Gotcha.
So I go and I'm like, I need to start socializing this.
Okay.
So let me share this vision with my bosses and get them excited about it. So I scheduled a meeting with Jason Zander and Scott Guthrie, who were the dev and PM heads for Azure at the time, reporting to Satya. So I scheduled a meeting and I have a paper written up about it, and they read the paper, and then I like, so they finish it, and Scott's like, this would be good for modeling, I think, SharePoint sites.
Oh.
And Jason's like, because SharePoint sites are like these IaaS deployments of a bunch of things. And Jason's like, yeah, it's interesting. And I'm like, okay, yeah, all right, well, thanks. And then the meeting ended, and I'm like, that's not the reaction I was hoping for.
You were hoping them for the see your genius and run with it. Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah,
Mark.
let's do this. And it was very much like, yeah, interesting.
That's
thanks.
how I felt going into my talk.
Yeah. So
I wanted to be buoyed into the next step.
Yeah.
And it did not happen.
So that's and ARM got made anyway. But that was an example of, oh man, I came out of that going, wow, what just happened? That didn't go anything like I expected it to.
When you get feedback like that, did it make you doubt yourself and your team and say like, well, maybe they're right? Or did it just, could have been the presentation wasn't tight? Like, why didn't it land?
Why didn't it land?
I know why mine didn't land.
I think, I have to say it's probably the selling of it that I didn't do.
Yeah.
And maybe they were busy thinking about other things, had other priorities, and this is like, okay, so maybe in the future at some point, not directly connecting to what their current priorities were is why they didn't get enthusiastic about it. But I didn't lose any conviction in the idea.
See, that's really good. I like that because there's feedback. There's the context within which the feedback occurs. It could be like landing a story like that on a Thursday at 2 could land very differently than at Monday at 9 a.m. at the first meeting of the day. You don't know where where Jason and Scott were in that moment. Just like I don't know where my feedback folks were in the presentation today. I wasn't at my best. My blood sugar was wrong. There's 50 reasons and context why it could be perfect or not. And being able to look at the holistic view of the feedback and the context in which it was given while still holding on to your convictions. Like, I know my idea is still good. I just need to reframe it. So even though I came out of it thinking I need to torch this, I'm not really going to torch it because there's a core there. There's a steel core that I'm not going to let go of. And you didn't let go of yours either.
Yeah, I think that's the key is like to look at the feedback and what's the feedback on actually. Did I get feedback on the idea? Did I get feedback on my presentation of the idea? Did I get no feedback at all, really? Because there's externalities there. By the way, the interesting study, this was, 20 years ago, of judges and the sentences, the severeness of sentences they would hand down. they did a study of judges of ones handed down before lunch and after lunch, and found the ones after lunch were more severe
When the judge is full on lunch,
and
you go
tired.
to jail for more
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
That's messed up.
yeah.
See, I don't like a 9 a.m. meeting, and who I am at 9 a.m. is very different than who I am at 3 on a Friday. And I know that about myself. So, like,
Yeah.
knowing your own biases. Um, I also know that, like, the feedback that I got today, that there's a bunch of other stuff that has to do with the organizing the event that's got nothing to do with me. Like, they got books to publish and snacks and caterers to call and all this kind of stuff. And now they have a new problem, which is me and my talk sucking. So, like, you need to know if someone's in the right headspace. And actually, this headspace thing is interesting. I started asking everyone before my podcasts if they're in a good place for this right now, and, like, literally 50% of them are like, "Wow, no one's ever asked me that before, and thank you." And some of them will go and say, I'm not in the right headspace to
And what
do
happens
this.
in that? You postpone it?
So yeah,
Or
I'll
just,
postpone it. Like, it could be that, like, one person had
so I could have
death in the
postponed today?
family. No, I'm fine. You're the
No.
one with the problem. No,
Yeah.
when you just don't know. At least they could have come from a
Yeah.
funeral. You just don't know. And I wish that we don't get, in the corporate world, you don't get to choose when the feedback comes, and you don't get to choose when the meeting with Scott Guthrie happens. You just have to show up and hope for the best. And the feedback might come wrong because they didn't have lunch, or they did. And the feedback could land weird because you're not in the right place to receive it. But there's an intentionality to receiving feedback and giving feedback that I think hopefully grows the longer you get into your career.
Yeah. And I think, being conscious of your reaction.
Hmm. Hmm.
And by the way, that takes me into, I think, something we talked about before, breathing.
Power
The
pose.
power poses. Yeah. And breathing, like,
Yeah.
because breathing makes you conscious of what's going on. Like, if somebody's giving you, I'm maybe when you got that negative feedback, you held your breath.
That is very true. I'm thinking about that now. You're absolutely right. I probably, like, leaned back and I went like this, and I probably
Yeah.
paused my entire body.
Yeah. Which makes it harder for you to receive it in a constructive way.
And at one point, one of the gentlemen said, "Don't interrupt me."
Wow. Did you
But
interrupt them, or did you
I did, because I was trying to
rebut
say
him?
that I heard
Yeah.
it,
Oh.
but I was also trying to say I don't want any more. Make it stop. It was one of those, like, I get it, I get it. It's like, no, don't interrupt me. I'm not done. And it's like, and then I have to, like, take the feedback.
Yeah.
So it was more like I want to escape now. It's like, nope, you can't escape yet. We're not finished. And that's valid. And being able to be in the place to receive that, I think, is
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
That's pretty humbling. I bet you haven't had an experience like that in a long time.
Oh no, that's, yeah. I mean, you probably haven't either. I mean, you give
Yeah.
talks and everyone's like, "Oh, the great Mark Russinovich, that's a
Yeah.
great, best talk I've ever seen," But that's not my audience,
Yeah.
and they know more than I do. So difficult, very very difficult to receive. But I do have a great speaker coach, and I'll do my best to make it not suck.
So I did, speaking of speaking coaches, there was the speaking coach, I can't remember his name, that did,
Oh, that one guy who always
yeah.
did that.
What was
Yeah,
his
yeah.
name? Richard?
Oh, yeah, Richard
Richard Cleese?
Richard Cleese. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I did him too.
So I did him. That was
Yeah,
brutal.
yeah, yeah. He didn't mess around.
Yeah, because his job is to point out everything
Mhm.
that you're not doing perfectly, or
Mhm.
and how you can improve. And so, I'd been giving top rated sessions forever, and I'm like, I'll let me go do this. I might learn something to be even
Yep.
better. And the feedback was like, you're pausing, you're stuttering, you
Yeah.
redid these words.
Get your hands out of your
Get
pockets,
your hands out
whatever.
of your
What's the
pockets.
different? Yeah, yeah.
You're not looking at the audience enough. You're reading your slot. It was like stuff like, oh, I didn't realize that I had those tics and those mannerisms to the depth that he just called me out on. So it was painful.
Yeah.
because
But
I imagine myself like, I'm a smooth talker. I don't
oh
do
yeah,
any of those
I'm the
things.
best speaker ever. Yeah, that's why I don't watch my talks. I don't watch my talks afterwards.
Yeah.
But you get to then pick the feedback. This is the other
Yeah.
thing people don't realize is that feedback is advice, and you do not need to take it
Yeah.
all. You can pick and choose. It's a cafeteria. I'm sure you pick some of those things, and you
Yeah.
still remember the fact that we're still talking about Richard all these years later. I did that speaker training
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Shows that he was probably right.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was very valid with that stuff.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff, I'm like, that's just who I am. I could try to work on getting rid of it. It's probably not worth it. But at least I'm aware of it. Okay, thanks. Okay. All right, let's critique each other's next talks.
Oh God. The problem is it'll end up being a joint talk, and you'll be like, "You're standing too close to me. You're standing."
Yeah.
I think though that we got to have people stick around in tech long enough so that they can get this feedback and feel confident in their jobs and their abilities and their work to get feedback and look at it as a gift as opposed to an attack. And I think that's ultimately where I would
agree.
End it. Yeah. Cool. Scott and Mark learn to give feedback and receive. That's a show.
I didn't think you did that well, that closing.
Why don't you do it better? Huh? Those who can't teach, right?
Ouch.
You some kind of film critic? Didn't go to film school? No, please, why don't you do it and we'll critique each other. Thank you for that feedback. I receive it with the gift and the intent that it was given.
It's good enough.
That's the opening line.